The principal guitarist of Metallica is Kirk Hammett. Still, for more than 40 years, in a band where every scream is remembered, people have continued to question what causes Kirk's guitar voice to be so frequently overlooked. Kirk Hammett stands in the shadows, letting his music speak for itself as James Hetfield yells revolt and Lars Ulrich strikes like a general leading a war. Oddly enough, his inherent quietness makes him quite hard to miss. No media stunts, no violent addictions, no sex scandals. Kirk lives like a ghost in an age when many rockers survive on noise and mayhem, obsessed with horror movies, collecting mummies and playing solos that seem to have been created by agony itself. But is that a decision, or fate? What transformed a timid San Francisco child into the emotional backbone of an empire? After over 4 decades, why does Kirk Hammett still seem like an outsider in his own band? Come with us as we reveal the path of a tortured soul who lived within an empire constructed by enormous egos. Early years. Born on November 18, 1962 in San Francisco, California, Kirk Lee Hammett came from a working-class household where the severity of life infiltrated every meal, every sigh following a grueling shift. His mother, of Filipino ancestry, worked part-time in restaurants. His father was a merchant seaman of Irish background. Anywhere that charged by the hour, laundromats, racial identity, was not a source of pride in their little suburban house. It was a calm load. Kirk felt from early on that he didn't really fit anywhere, too Asian to be considered a white American child, too American to relate to the Asian immigrant group. Growing up with curly hair, light brown skin, and a visage that puzzled peers about how to classify him. Thus, they went the most basic way. They omitted him. Bullied and alone, Kirk slowly retreated within himself. He had no say in the classroom, didn't enjoy socializing, and wasn't particularly athletic. What he did have, though, was a great imagination driven by vintage horror movies, ripped monster posters, and the screaming chords emanating from his older brother Rick's tape player. Rick was the first to play Kirk Led Zeppelin, UFO, Jimi Hendrix. Odd, electrifying noises that caused the quiet youngster to first experience his heart stir. It was not only music, it was a portal to another universe where feelings need not be stated out loud. Kirk purchased his first guitar, a cheap Montgomery Ward SG, coupled with a Sears amp that produced more noise than music, using the small money he collected from selling toys and comic books. But he was unconcerned. The instant his fingertips brushed the strings, he knew he had been looking for this voice all along. While other children fantasized about becoming police officers or astronauts, Kirk wanted to be a ghost, quiet, concealed, yet all-seeing. In the realm of demons, screaming guitars and dark shadows, a lonely genius was being born and no one even knew it. First job. When he got to his teenage years, Kirk Hammett was no longer the timid child cowering behind the television screen, practicing till his fingers were calloused. He was now a young guy with a guitar always in hand. He didn't wish for celebrity, didn't consider money or opulent venues. The music was all that motivated Kirk. It was the one thing he could really control in the world. Kirk and a small group of pals created Exodus in 1980 at only 17 years old, a young thrash metal band from the Bay Area. It was not a well-known band, and during Kirk's tenure with them, they never published an official record. Exodus taught him, however, how to stand his ground on stage, how to scream through his guitar under crushing drumming and the oppressive heat of sweat-soaked, beer-stained pubs. Over time, he chiseled out his own unique approach, bold but exacting, always with a murky undertone underlying every note, quick but never superficial. A few hundred miles south, another young band was getting ready to record their first album, Metallica. But conflict was building. Consumed by drink, aggression and unending conflicts with the rest of the band, their lead guitarist Dave Mustaine was spinning out of control. April 1, 1983, Kirk got an odd phone call. Lars Ulrich, Metallica's drummer, was on the other end. Though they hadn't informed him yet, they had chosen to let Mustaine go and hoped Kirk Hammett would replace him. Just one offer. No band meeting, no audition. We're recording our debut album, fly to New York now. Kirk still had unfulfilled aspirations with Exodus. Metallica, however, at that time, this was the only door open. He didn't require time to consider. A week later, he was in New York City, connecting his guitar to an amp in the Killamall studio. Then a completely new chapter in heavy metal history started. Not with a drum beat, not with a shout, but with a blade-like cold sharp riff. Turn on the lights. Few people realized Dave Mustaine was still on a bus when Kirk played his first note for Metallica. Boiling with anger, oblivious he had only been replaced. Kirk Hammett, with his unsettling serenity, became the guy who altered the destiny of the best thrash metal band of all time following one of the quietest coups in rock history. He remained silent. He simply plugged in, changed the neck, and let the riff speak for itself. Professional achievements starting with the first notes of Kill 'Em All, 1983, Kirk Hammett showed he wasn't only a substitute. Until they had him, he was the missing component Metallica was unaware they lacked. Unlike Dave Mustaine, hot, explosive and volatile, Kirk offered something colder, deeper, more eerie. He didn't play quickly only to wow, he played to torment. Kirk Hammett never had to yell or give speeches to assert his position. From Kill 'Em All to Master of Puppets, a guitar, a wah pedal, and a soul brimming with quiet scars were all he required. The solos he created throughout Metallica's golden decade were tragedies intertwined in sound, not only about technique. Starting like a tear dropping into quiet, fade to black ends with a solo that screams like a stifled cry, an emotion metal fans never imagined they required until they experienced it. Creeping deaths brutal but hypnotic, Kirk's guitar marches the audience toward an old execution. He removed all glitz with the Unforgiven, playing each note as though he were breathing, living, recalling something lost forever. Enter Sandman, however, both the band's commercial zenith, and a symptom of more profound transformation. Starting with a tight palm mute and erupting like a nightmare, one solitary riff, Hammett imprinted Metallica's sound into the world's memories. Yet, behind that famous solo was a guitarist who sometimes seemed to be on the verge. Kirk's performance was a peculiar mix of frantic pace and gloomy emotion. Unlike Vai or Satriani, he didn't run the clock like Mustaine. Kirk played as though every note communicated something unspoken. Jimi Hendrix's impact on Michael Schenker and Eric Clapton whirled through his flowing legatos, painful bends, and above all, the wah-wah pedal that became his hallmark. Every time he pushed it down, the guitar screamed like a buried scream, no words, but every feeling comprehended. But under those notes was something Kirk never forgot: Cliff Burton's death. Cliff, the bandmate Kirk most admired, greatest friend, killed in a bus accident in 1986, while Metallica was on European tour. They had pulled straws for bunks. Kirk triumphed but ceded his position to Cliff. The bus crushed that bunk. Cliff perished right away. Kirk Hammett never again slept soundly on tour from that day forward. He hardly mentioned the mishap. At the burial, he spoke little. He just plugged in his guitar and played solos as though tomorrow would never arrive. After that night, something in his tone shifted permanently, deeper, slower, like a fracture that would never heal. Though he was the lead guitarist, Kirk was never in the forefront of the songwriting process. The focus shrank to two names, Hetfield and Ulrich. As Metallica went beyond the Black Album, they got the last say on mixing, shaped the artistic direction, authored the tunes, the lyrics. Kirk Hammett, though he was the main guitarist, he gradually turned into someone given pieces to play instead of invited to design them. He still received credit, he still played scorching solos, but in the studio, in the conference rooms, his voice was almost non-existent, not because he lacked talent but rather because he didn't battle for it. Metallica went from being one silent nod to two powerhouses. Kirk was always last in line, willing to compose a solo when requested, but seldom given the opportunity to start a song, and over time, even as his talent and soul stayed at their height, that diminished his creative part. The greatest setback arrived in 2014. Kirk misplaced his phone, what he termed his personal treasure box for the upcoming album, including more than 250 riffs he had penned during the years. What was gone, though it was his last opportunity to recover a part in the creative process, not only facts, by the time they walked into the studio for Hardwired, or to Self-Destruct, had nearly nothing left to give. Hetfield and Ulrich had already constructed the structure for the record. Whatever Kirk contributed, if anything, was not utilized. The album was released with his name almost missing from the writing credits. In a band that previously said every member counts, Kirk's quietude was not only a personal characteristic, it became to be the justification for driving him farther from the center. Fans refer to him as the quiet soul of Metallica, which is either a praise or a kind way of stating he doesn't fit. Kirk said flatly, when questioned why he didn't battle more for a voice in the band, "I don't like to argue, I only want to play guitar." At first glance, it seems like a quiet artist's mantra, but if you pay attention, and it resonates like resignation after being excluded too many times. Perhaps that's why Kirk Hammett puts all he can't express into every solo. The last venue he still gets to be completely, unequivocally himself. Private life. Kirk Hammett isn't the sort of person if you picture a great Metallica guitarist, living in a lavish mansion partying till morning and enjoying the spotlight. The guitar goes quiet as the stage lights fade dark. He withdraws into a frigid, lonely realm packed with mummies, haunting dolls and older horror movies. Kirk dislikes gatherings. Crowds frighten him. He despises strife. More than anything, he simply wants peace and quiet. While Metallica traveled the globe, other band members might relax with booze and raucous backstage activities. Kirk would retreat to his hotel room to watch vintage movies, sketch, and sometimes cradle his guitar in the dark, or just holding his guitar in the dark. What other people consider odd, views as holy. His collection of artificial skulls, monster masks, wax figures, film posters, and horror is among the largest in the world. Once he organized the It's Alive art show, a room totally taken over by the obsessions of a childhood, marked by abandonment, isolation, and ghosts. Kirk lived around unsettling pictures, not only collected them, as though it were the only way he could express his anxieties without suffering. Years after Cliff Burton's death, a friend once remarked, "I'm not sure Kirk ever got over it. He simply let it exist inside him in his own manner." Twice married, Kirk Hammett right as Metallica blew out, following Master of Puppets. His first wife, Rebecca Hammett, married him in 1987, but 3 years later, they discreetly divorced. No kids, no public justification. Maybe that was the first indication Kirk Hammett, with all his sensitivity and oddity, never really belonged in the actual world. To him, love was like music, always lovely, but not always intended to last. He met and married Lonnie Hammett, a woman outside the entertainment industry, in 1998. Far from the public glare, they lived secretly. They had 2 boys together. For those who ever witnessed Kirk backstage with his children, it was one of the few times the silent artist really grinned. For a long time, family was what Kirk referred to as my soul piece. Some fights are fought quietly. Not every war concludes with a bang. No one knows precisely when the fissures in their marriage started. Perhaps it was the constant travel. Perhaps it was because Kirk more and more resided inside his own mind. He wasn't dishonest. He didn't ruin, like he usually did, from the world. He simply gradually vanished from the relationship. They divorced discreetly in 2022. No news, no comments, no one said anything, and no one was particularly shocked. Kirk's guitar was probably the one item that most likely felt it. Some of his songs never made it to publication.